Okay, this week we're going to hit some of the other loose ends on the minimum effective dose series and hit on a handful of other qualities that you may want to include in your training program. Now, as always, it depends on where you're starting from and your prior experience. So if any of these things are something you haven't been doing in your program regularly, start very slow and a very small amount is probably going to give you a pretty good bang for your buck. So let's tick these off. I'm just going to touch on these a little bit. So speed, by speed, I'm talking about primarily sprinting speed, but it could be on a different modality, cycling, rowing, etc. These, for best results, this is something that needs to be trained pretty frequently, as in every few days, honestly. But if you're in a general preparedness program, sprinting isn't your sport. You're not trying to train for a sport like football or soccer or something like that. I find somewhere between 1 to twice a week, and at roughly really only about 60 yards of total sprinting volume. Now you'll need to warm up well before you do this. So, and these are just short runs, 10, 20, 40 yards. You can see that's very, very minimal, but I've had good results with the people I've worked on. And included this in their program just once or twice a week. Again, that's not for a specialist or if it's a main quality, but that is enough to move the needle. Plyometrics, so jumping and things like that. First thing I'll say is you really want to make a focus on what would be known as extensive plyos, which is hopping and bounding and two-legged jumping before the cool, sexy stuff like depth jumps. Most of you are going to get by far your biggest benefit from just a good base of the extensive plyos, and then you can layer on some of the more intense stuff later on, but you won't benefit too much from jumping into that stuff without the base. So this is something I've been doing a lot lately and in programs lately, and I find twice a week and at a maximum about just 10 minutes worth of work, steady progress. So that is more than enough. We do anywhere from usually 1 to 200 foot contacts in that time. Sometimes here and there more. It depends again on your prior experience, but that's plenty to move the needle and regain a lot of athleticism and springiness. Typically, I would do the speed and plyo stuff together in a session, and that's probably most sessions. That's going to be the early part of what's otherwise going to be a strength session. Sometimes plyometrics I will do either before or after a longer, more endurance or aerobic type effort. So it depends. So some ways you can put them together. Another one, though it doesn't really fit in the category with those, training the breath in some manner or another. So this is a big area, right? There's many ways we can train that. So it depends on what your focus is, but I've had really good success with just simply twice a week with no more than 20 minutes of cadence breathing to try to change CO2 tolerance and breathing patterns. And that's as long as you're doing 30 to 60 seconds ish daily breath hold or bolt test. That has improved massively. It's not something you necessarily need to do every day. And when I've done them frequently, I haven't seen any better results than I have from just doing a little 2 10-minute a week sessions. So if you're doing more respiratory training like power or capacity, I've also really stripped that down to the minimum and seen that about 10 minutes worth of work twice a week definitely is enough to see steady progress. Is it optimal? No, but none of the minimum effective doses are absolutely optimal for that quality, you have to remember. So I honestly think you probably could get away with 1 10-minute session of some sort of cadence work and 1 session of respiratory training in a week, and as long as you did the 30 to 60 second daily test, you'd be moving forward just fine. There's other qualities out there. Obviously, skill is one that many people are interested in, and really experiment, figure it out. A minimum of regular exposure is almost always enough to give you results without a lot of fatigue. So I would say always pick a small amount and build from there if needed. So there's other qualities too, but those are the main ones. If anybody has any questions on what about this, you can pop them in the notes and I'll try to get to those questions. I'm going to wrap this one up next week with some final thoughts, and we'll look at when you might want to go full send on something.